Hi everyone. This week's topic is ethics, and this online lecture builds on the face-to-face lecture on ethics. The main purpose of this lecture is really to help you fill in the SUREC 7 form. Okay, this is the ethical form that you need to submit in order to be able to create and disseminate your questionnaire in a couple of weeks. We're going to start off by watching a video about ethical research. Then it's going to be a page-by-page overview of the form that you need to submit. And finally, there's an ethics checklist that you can look through while you're filling in your form. In the ethics folder, there's another folder called online lecture, which is where you found this lecture. Next to this lecture, you'll see there's a research ethics video. So please pause this screencast and watch the video and then come back to the lecture. Okay, so now you watched the video on research ethics, which gave you a bit of an overview of the face-to-face lecture as well. You should all be familiar with why we need these ethical forms, because in the past there have been so many horrible experiments without any ethical consideration at all. So you might be thinking, well, why do I need to fill out a form for this module? We're just creating a questionnaire. Well, anytime you engage with people in research, you do need to fill out a form. So there's no exception for you. So the following slides are going to take you through the document, and I will explain a bit about what you need to write in the different sections. So this is the start of the research ethics checklist for students, also called SUREC 7. So please take a moment to read over this. It explains a bit why you need to fill this form in, and different policies we have, and so on. The first section of the SUREC 7 form is called General Details. It's quite straightforward. You just put your name, email, and so on. You may not have a title of your research yet, but please come up with a title that links to your research question or your topic, just so you have a title. So I've circled one of the main bits on this section that you really need to focus on. And this is the brief outline of your proposed research. It asks you to include rationale and aims. And it says here 250 to 500 words. So somewhere between 200 and 300 words is fine. But this is where you want to include your research question, your objectives, your methodologies, all of that, which we've worked on up until next week. You need to provide a summary here. So it's very important, do not leave this blank. There has to be a brief description in here. And remember, in the workshop, we will go over the form together again. So if anyone has questions about this part of the SUREC 7, we can work through that. Okay, so the other question here is about the data you're going to collect. So please make sure that you mention something about privacy, which I talked about in the face-to-face lecture. Okay. So this is where it becomes a bit more complex. I'm not going to tell you the right answers for all of these questions, but please read this over and try to determine if this applies to you or not. Again, we can help you in the workshop, so don't worry, but try to figure this out on your own first. Essentially, this part is about, are you using vulnerable participants or a vulnerable population in your research? Are you using people from NHS or prisons and so on? This is the bottom section to question 1 and 2. And this just gives more instructions when you need external approval for your project. So just read this over so you're aware of the process. So this is section 2, which deals with research with human participants. Again, I'm not going to give you the right or wrong answers, but please read through this carefully and think about whether this applies to you. Are you going to use human participants in your study? And please note, if you say yes, you need to answer questions 2 through 10. So if you answered yes to human participants, you need to provide an answer to all these questions. So please look through these carefully and see if they are relevant to your research. You do not need to worry about the text on top of section 3, because your data collection takes place within the module. It's a bit different, and you don't need to worry about any other forms. Section 3 is about research in organizations. So think about whether your research involves another organization or working with an organization. So please answer yes or no to these questions. Section 4 is about research with products and artifacts. Are you going to use any documents or films or photos, existing data sets, and so on? So again, you need to answer yes or no to these questions. And here's just a continuation about working with products or artifacts. So make sure you read through this and think about whether you have permission to use the materials if you're using any. So that was it. Those are the questions that you need to answer, yes or no, or give a summary for some of the questions. At this point, we're at the adherence to SHU policy and procedures. So normally you would sign this, using a pen and then scan it and upload it, but it's fine if you just type in your name and date. So here's the final bit on the SHUREX 7 form. You don't have to worry about ticking all these boxes, but normally you would have to provide all these different items. So information sheet where you explain to the participants about your research and the goals and any harms or risks. You would have a consent form where they agree that they want to participate in your study. All kinds of extra material that will help the ethical board decide whether your research is ethical or not. Okay, so this is the end of the form. It's not supposed to be very difficult, so just try your best and answer the questions, and like I said, you can just bring your completed or semi-completed form to the workshop and we can help you navigate through the questions. But again, the main bit is going to be summarizing your proposed research. So aims and rationale. So the main idea is that you take a summary of what you've done already in the boxes for your final assessment, which is essentially a summary of your study. Finally, here's a checklist with different questions about ethical issues, and this may help you in thinking about your research. So have a look through this while you're filling in the form, or after, if you want to revise your form. Okay, so this is going to be the end of the online lecture. Hopefully now you have a good idea of how to fill in the form and why you have to fill in the form and so forth. If you have any questions, please email us or ask in the workshops.